Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's very special episode of the Modern Sales Mastery Show. I am Felipe Gonzalez, your event host for today and social media coordinator here at Vengreso. We're having a two-part episode for International Women's Day with the topic for this year, Break the Bias. Let us know in the comments below where you're tuning in from. It's time to invite all your friends and family to join. Without further ado, let's get started. Let me introduce today's host for today's show. For today, for more than 2 decades, 108 quarters, she has partnered with business leaders, executives, and entrepreneurs in the B2B space to drive effective sales strategy through customer engagement. She has worked with more than 200 mid-sized to large organizations and managed teams from 5 to 1,500. Please help me welcome our own Chief Customer Officer at Vengreso, Priya Sachdev. Priya, take it away. We can't hear you, Priya.
Each time, every time, when you think you figured this out, it surprises you.
You
Excited to be here, nevertheless, even though I was excited on mute. So, as Felipe said, my name is Priya Sachdev. I'm the Chief Customer Officer here at Vengreso and an evangelist for the women cause, if I can call it that. I keep saying this to everybody that I want in my lifetime to get to a point where we do not need to celebrate Women's Day anymore. And till then, I will keep celebrating it each year, every year, not for just a day, for a month if it's required, to raise our voice and build awareness to the biases. And this year's theme is absolutely close to my heart, Break the Bias. And I can tell you, there are loads of those to break. So before going any further, I want to welcome to join me Melissa. Melissa's been a friend, a peer in the industry, and a leader that I absolutely respect. Melissa is the Chief Revenue Officer at Hootsuite, and I'll let her introduce herself furthermore. But I just want to start with saying I absolutely am inspired by your journey as a woman and as a sales leader. And so excited to have you with us today. Tell us a little more about you.
Priya, thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and thanks for your friendship over the years. We had the opportunity to meet in India when I was launching Sales Navigator into India, and you were such a great support. Coming in, not knowing a lot of people in the country, and not just being a woman, but being an American woman, you just really made me feel comfortable and welcome. And I think that's what this reminder of International Women's Day is all about. How can we reach out to help lift each other up? But as you said, I'm the CRO here at Hootsuite, and I support the Hootsuite Revenue Organization by empowering and enabling all of our people to be their best. I achieve this by creating an environment where people are encouraged to invest in themselves, inspire their customers, and be part of the growth of our company.
Perfect. And so you already touched upon it, and let's just start there. Breaking the bias. An American woman being a sales leader in APAC, and it's not just moving geographies, but your family joined you there as well, and you still had a quota to run after and new geographies to open up. Tell us some of the biases that come to your mind that you kind of were more aware of them there, that you may have never noticed them if you were in the US, for example.
Mm. When we met, that was the second time I had gone to Singapore. And the first time I had gone to Singapore to open up the office for another company and launch Asia, and eventually India as well. And I was much younger then. So not only was I an American woman, I was an American young woman. And the company had said, you're going to go and you're going to do it. And then when I got there, they said, is this really the right look for us? And they said, well, we're gonna do a process and see if you really are the right person for the role, after I had already moved there. And so we went through this whole process with an executive recruiter, and they ended up hiring a 50-year-old man and said, well, you can just report to him, do everything you were going to do, but he's really the person we want representing us. And then, a couple of months later, it didn't work out. And they said, hey, Melissa, you think you could be the leader again? And, that was just, I didn't look hard. They didn't think people would take me seriously. Yeah. They didn't want me to be the face of the organization because they thought that it wasn't putting the best look forward for the company.
Yeah. And so you touched upon another one, which is ageism, right? So if you were not already fighting being a woman, now you also fight the bias of being on either side of age. I've heard stories being on the other side, being a plus 50 women sales leader, where sometimes people have looked at you and said, you sure you can do this? Are you sure? Do we need somebody younger in the tech space?
Right, especially in the industry we're in right now, right? Tech, it's cool. Once you get a certain age, you're not, you need to, this is the thing about being a woman. You need to be the right age to be taken seriously, but not too old that you're not cool anymore. So it's the balance of the in-between. And then, another thing I think about with like the breaking the bias piece is what we project on what women should be doing. So there have been many times I'm in conversations with other leaders and we're talking about someone for a role. And we'll say, well, what about this woman for the role? And someone will raise their hand and they think they're being kind. It does come from a place of kindness. And they'll say, well, I know she just bought her house and her child is ready to go to school. So we don't want to put too much on her. Right. And I understand they're being kind, but we need to let women choose what they want to take on and not make that choice for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is so powerful, right? Giving them the choice. Like if a man bought a house and had a little kid, were we being kind there? Maybe not, right? But we do that all the while. I can tell you, I was on a webinar a couple of years ago talking about women and diversity. And I have a sales manager who puts in a question and says, I have 3 profiles I've shortlisted for the role, one of them being a woman, and the HR is asking me to pick the women. And he's like, I may have done it out of choice, but the fact that they have now asked me to do that, I am raising this as a flag, because is that what you mean by diversity? And I'm like, no, not really, right? That's exactly what we are not saying. We are not saying choose me only because I'm a woman, right? But choose me for the capability I bring to the table. If of the 3, you white labeled it and said, I'm going to pick the best profile. So what if it happens to be a woman or it happens to be the guy? That's fair. But I think that choice, and it works both ways, right? While we give women the choice, we need to give the leaders the choice to choose the best resource for them as well. Yeah. So talk to me
Yes,
about sales leadership a little as well, because that's another complete different league, right? Of being in sales, chasing quotas, and being a leader and being across geographies.
yes, it's, just reflecting on what you said there, we hear so much people saying like, well, we can't compromise the quality. We really have to make sure we're choosing the best person for the job. And I kind of think that that's a cop out, because that gives you an excuse to say that you don't want to diversify. And just a great example of this, when I was in Singapore, I had a wonderful manager on my team. And we were in Singapore, and he had a Singapore sales team, and he had 9 white men on that sales team. And so I said to him, like, where are the Singaporeans? Where are the women? And he just said, there aren't any. And I said, well, I'm not going to approve any more visas for non-Singaporeans to work on the sales team. And once we put that stake in the ground, all of a sudden we found all of these amazing local talent. We had 50% women on the team, and we just opened up our minds because it's easy to bring in, somebody who is in the majority that does that job all the time. But it's a lot harder to then cast a wider net and see who else could be out there. So I do a lot of times put guidelines in place for my team because that's the only way we go outside of our comfort zone and we look into pools of talent that we wouldn't typically consider qualified for these types of roles. But it's all about competencies and capabilities over experiences, because maybe no one gave some of these people those experiences and opportunities in the past, and someone's got to take that first step.
Yeah. I think that is so important, right? As a leader, forget sales, forget women, just as a leader, if it is to take average people to excellence, I always say, let's question ourselves to say, how many people in your team did you do that? How many people did you lift them up? And specifically women, and I'm going back to that point because if women don't lift up women, we will always remain that minority. So while I wish the men would do that as well, my appeal would be, at least as women, let's do that. Let's lift up the women in our team. Maybe they need a little more mentorship or coaching to manage some situations or to prioritize, because yes, we will have responsibilities of home and children. Even if we have amazing partners, we still will have that responsibility. We are designed to be nurturers, right? We just take that upon ourselves a little more than anybody else would. Would you agree to that?
Yes, I think it's so important for women to have supportive partners. If a woman doesn't have a supportive partner, then it makes it even more difficult because there's not the sharing of the load. And I've been so lucky in my career to have a partner who is supportive of my ambition and what I want to do. And he has taken on additional things in our family that typically men don't. And so I think that's really, really important. And then you also are fighting the bias of so many men in senior leadership positions don't have partners who work. And so when they look at you, they think like, you've got to be home soon to like make the dinner, right? Because that's what happens in their household. And so
Yeah.
you're fighting that unconscious bias of how they see the women closest to them in their lives.
Yeah, and that is such an important point, right? Because a lot of them will feel that they're giving you your space. So you don't need to be on the late evening meeting because, and I've heard that many times, it's okay if you want to skip it. And I'm like, no, no, can we schedule it at a time that's more comfortable for me? But I do not want to skip it just because I'm fixing dinner for the family, which, by the way, I love doing. But,
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean I want to compromise on not being there for a meeting or anything else for that matter, right? So it's a great point there, and I just want to call out Felipe to roll out our commercial, and we'll be back soon and talking more about breaking the bias. And we're back. So, a cliche statement, yet I am going to ask you, if there was one advice you would give your 20-year-old, what would you give as an advice to yourself?
I think I would let myself know that there's actually no way to know or to plan for what's coming. All of the opportunities that I've had in my career and in my life, I never could have imagined back when I was 20. But back then, I thought you need to have a clear path and a clear goal, and these are the steps to do that. And sometimes when you do that, you miss out on opportunities. And the best opportunities are sometimes the most risky and not the most obvious. And so, the move I made to Australia in 2007 completely changed the trajectory of my career. But it was
Sure.
a huge risk. If I hadn't just gone for it, then I wouldn't be where I am today. And I I didn't know that back when I was 20. I thought, everything that happens on a path and it's clear and obvious for you.
Plotted. Yeah, it needs to be plotted and planned. I wish all the 20-year-olds listened to that because even more so in the generation now, I see that as such a pressure. They want everything to be planned. And I keep laughing at this to say, even in an Excel file, you can insert and delete the rows. So give yourself the space to do that in life as well, right?
Yeah,
And
right. We know our careers are long. And
yeah,
like when you're younger, you get impatient. Like this promotion didn't happen in the 3-month window I wanted it to happen. And then you make really aggressive choices because you think everything is short. But careers are long, and um, being impatient, you might actually miss a great opportunity down the line.
absolutely. And if careers are long, they are just getting longer because I don't know about you, but I for sure do not want to retire ever. This is how I want to go to the grave if I have to go to the grave. Working and having fun and having conversations and still making my last sales pitch and getting that high of, yes, I did it once again before God decides that enough is enough and it's time for you to go, women. You've done enough. So yeah, I think that's such a strong and powerful point. Uh, what about leaving a message for the women who may be listening to us live now or may listen to this recording on any of our platforms later? Specifically, looking at where you are from a sales leadership role, and you can talk about sales and talk about leadership both. What are maybe one or two things you want women to just keep in mind from your street wisdom, as I call it?
I think first is go after what you want. Tell people that you want it and don't expect that people know. I shared this earlier in the week, but people aren't going to come and tap you on the shoulder, or very rarely they will come and tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, I have this really awesome opportunity for you. You need to be sharing openly with as many people as possible what it is that you want to do. And sometimes people don't like that. In my career, people have said to me, like, Melissa, you're pushing too hard. Like, this isn't coming across well. But then a lot of the roles I have are because people knew that's what I was looking for. And so when they were thinking about who could do this role, they thought, oh, Melissa's always talking about doing a role like this. Let me give her a call. So go for what you want. Tell people what you want. Don't wait for someone to come and get you. And don't wait until you're fully qualified, because there is never the exact fit puzzle piece to go into the puzzle. But we
Yeah.
wait until we're perfectly ready to raise our hands and say, it's my turn.
Yeah, yeah, I know. And there is no perfect Monday morning. And I think it's getting tougher by the day from that perspective, right? Because I just think about 3 years ago, the way we were selling to how we're selling today has changed drastically. And I, I just feel that if we're talking about virtual selling and digital selling and all those elements coming into sales, I feel if women were ever hesitant of being in a sales career, now all those obstacles have been taken away. You don't have to worry about sweating in the field. You don't have to worry about traveling in trains and being handled the way you do not want to be. And believe me, in India, that's been a challenge. So, all of a sudden, I feel that now you're sitting in the comfort of your homes. You can manage work, you can manage home, you can be looking over your kids while they're doing online school. So, now what's your excuse for not to be in sales? And have you
Yes,
felt like that? Have you noticed that as well?
I agree with you. I think what the last 2 years have taught us is there's no one right way to sell. And I think that's great for people who have been hesitant to get into sales. Like it's not that, that out there all the time. It's actually like being curious and talking to people and seeking out how you can help them. And you mentioned earlier, women tend to be more nurturing than men. And so if you're selling in a nurturing way, you're bringing a different aspect to sales. And so it's just, I think, opening the aperture of the type of people who can get into sales now. Not that there's not a place for the way we were selling before, but there are so many other ways. And I find as a buyer, like, I want to buy from people, no matter who they are, who I think truly care about understanding my problems as a sales leader and wanting to solve them and believe that they are going to be with me as we try to do that. And I think women can do that equally as well as men.
Absolutely. And so the last question that I'm going to ask you is a kind of a spin ball on you, but talk to me about managing the men in your team. Does that bring any biases to the table? What's been some of your experiences?
Well, I have a great group of men and women on my team right now. And I feel like they equally respect me as a woman, but as a leader. But one thing that I'm always conscious of is, as we're talking about diversifying our team, I also don't want them to feel like I have anything against them. right? I'm not trying to say there is no place for them or they're not great, by wanting to have diversity. And they
Yeah.
are just truly amazing as far as their openness to bringing more women onto our team, because we have had some challenges, especially in enterprise sales, where we don't have enough women on the team. We don't have women in leadership. And the male leader who's responsible for that knows it and is working very hard on it. And then one of my other male leaders, all of his direct reports of leaders are women. And so in the role I have right now, it's been an amazing partnership with common goals of creating an inclusive environment. But it hasn't always been that way. I've had men work for me in the past who wanted to undermine everything I was saying and just didn't
Mm.
really believe that I had earned my place to be their boss. And they'd never really experienced, taking orders from a woman before, and it was really foreign. But I think we've come a long way. I don't feel
Yeah.
that in my organization now at all. And I feel like so grateful because I know how awkward and terrible it can be when it's the other way around.
Yeah. And I know that sometimes I've struggled with being more of an agony aunt in the sales leader role. Um, but that's got nothing to being a woman, but just being who I am. I just am very curious. And so I will ask you, how are you feeling today? And is there something that's bothering you, or picking up the cues if you're not smiling enough today and saying, are you okay? And a lot of times people have felt that, oh, so this is the women in you who's just wanting to empathize more. And I have to tell them that no, 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 no. This is just the person in me who's just aware. And maybe being in sales, it's been a strength I've leveraged on. But I do see that sometimes you do get typecast. Oh, because you're a woman, you're just more aware of some of those things, which I think is unfair, because I've had a manager, Tim McCartney, right? I keep calling him out. He is such an empathetic leader, like one of the best ones I've had in terms of empathy. And this is where I think it's important to understand the idea of putting our voice out as women is not being feminist. It's not as if we're standing there raising our flags to make a cause to say we want our rights, but it's really just being an equalist, right? Saying we are possibly 50% of the population, and I don't know the exact numbers, and that's why I'm saying possibly, but I think we're pretty close. So why would we be a minority in any career, in any profession, or in any workplace for that matter? Because we still do know we are a minority in B2B sales at the least, because that's where I come from, and I think that's where you work as well.
Yes, and it's about representation, right? It's about
Yeah.
representation, not taking over. And the reason I have these conversations publicly is not to like reminisce about some of these hard things, but so that other people who are going through them now can know there's light at the end of the tunnel. And it's not everyone and it's not everywhere, and keep
Yeah.
persisting, and there are people here who want to lift you up, and you're not alone. And so I think that's why we have to have these conversations and be really transparent about what some of the true obstacles are, so people can feel like I can get over them. Like these ladies got over them, I can get over them too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's also the reason why we're celebrating Women's Day on this platform as well, because that's exactly what we want to do. We want to be able to use every platform we have to raise our voices and welcome all the women and the men to know that, this is about being equalist, and this is about breaking the biases, which is the theme this time. And it's about just creating an equal opportunity for everybody and appreciating the talent they bring. Quick closing comments, remarks from you, and then we'll have Felipe roll out the commercial.
Thanks for having me. I hope this conversation was helpful to people who are watching, women and men alike, and go for it. we can all do it when we do it together.
Yeah. And anything you want to say as a sales leader from Hootsuite? Last.
Yes, check out Hootsuite Careers. We have lots of great opportunities in sales, and we're doing amazing things and hoping to create a really inclusive environment for anyone who joins. So I hope you'll check it out.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Melissa, for this conversation. I've absolutely enjoyed it, and I hope everybody who listens in also enjoys it as much. Great connecting with you once again, and I hope we get a chance to meet soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, Priya.
We're not sweating our numbers. We're not struggling to prospect or find customers. We're not even sweating into quarter. Because we're growing a foundation of A-level sales talent. We're rethinking successful habits. And we're rethinking our entire digital prospecting strategy. We're going to break records and explode our sales funnel. We're doing things differently, and we're doing things better. Better than before. Because this program showed us how to not only excel at sales, but how to become a prospecting master.